I hereby call this regular meeting of the King George County Service Authority Board of Directors to order. We will start with an invocation by Mr. Parker, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Miller. If you're able to stand, please do so. Thank you. Mr. Miller, do we have any amendments to the agenda?
No, sir.
Okay, moving on to public comments. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. If comments relate to a specific public hearing item, we ask that you offer those comments at the time of the public hearing. Anybody in the room wish to speak? Mr. Dines, I understand we have a caller online. Okay. Ma'am, are you there? Hello? Okay. You can't raise her? Okay. Mr. Dines, we're going to move forward to the reports of the board members, and if you get her back online, give me a high five. Okay. Ms. Bender?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate hearing from residents of the Shiloh District and Service Authority customers, be it answering questions or just providing a further understanding of a matter. So when I received inquiries into the amount of activity at the Perkins Corner wastewater plant, I asked for more information from staff. With the event of social media concerns going far and wide whenever there's an issue is brought up, with that being said, I want to make sure not only myself, but all of the board of directors receive information when there is an issue at any of our plants. It is hard to answer questions or stop an overused term, I will use, misinformation from flowing without a heads up. In the future, I'd like to see a few items that would be an asset to everyone from the public to the highest authority, the board of directors. One would be, I would like to see monthly updates on how our financials are doing, budget versus actual. This has been requested previously. The return to reporting of the nutrient levels and how we are doing based on our permits at the wastewater plants. Our former GM did this in his report. Doesn't have to be read fully, but presented on a PowerPoint. And lastly, I would love to accept Mr. Miller's offer of a tour of all 5 wastewater plants. This will allow a fresh and current look at each plant's operations. That's my board report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bender. Mr. Parker?
No report, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Kupka?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to report back to the board on Sunday, February 20th, the House Appropriations Committee and the Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee advanced their budget bills out of committee. I'm pleased to report that both money committees reported the $16 million in ARPA wastewater improvements contained in former Governor Northam's original budget. These funds would allow us to address the decommissioning of Perkins Corner and Oakland Park wastewater treatment plants, both of which are necessary as we will be unable to meet the reliability standards in the DEQ superseding consent order. Future capacity upgrades and improvements to Dahlgren, Hopyard, and Fairview Beach wastewater treatment plants, and inflow infiltration projects without taking on new debt by the authority. I included in my board report, which I will have published online on the county website tomorrow, a link to all of the budget reports, and I have provided all members a markup of the versions that were passed subsequent to the money committees on February 20th. Last Thursday, on February 24th, the floor-approved version of House Bill 30 with the markups on the drinking water, wastewater, and CSOs section, as well as the SB 30, which is the Senate version, floor approved again on February 24th. And you'll note, and I confirmed with Senator Stewart a little while ago, that nowhere did either side strike any of the funding for King George County Service Authority. So this is very good news that it is moving forward in the House and the Senate for, final consideration in the state budget going forward. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Kupka. Ms. Cleveland.
Yes, thank you. I have a few comments. So on the Perkins Corner issue, I as well heard chatter and questions about issues from a few members in my district. And it was unfortunate that I didn't have any information to provide them. I also saw a lot of comments on Facebook regarding this and the citizens asking what was going on. I do believe that anything outside of normal operation and a normal operation budget should be shared with the board. And I know that Mr. Miller is going to be making comments on this in his management report. So I'm going to save any more comments around Perkins Corner for after that report. I do agree with Mrs. Bender's comment, though, that this information should be shared with all board members. I got an email on Friday after I inquired about the issues that I had heard about, but to my understanding, it started on Saturday or Sunday timeframe. There was also a lot of comments on the King George County Facebook page in reference to the 2x2 meetings the Service Authority had on the merger with King George County. So I do also want to address that, as they also shared a video of our board meeting. I want to be clear to say that I too believe that the 2x2 meetings were not transparent. I did want a discussion with the board in a public meeting, and I escalated these concerns to Mr. Miller and the chairman before the meetings occurred. However, I did confirm with the county attorney that they were legal. I always believe the more information, the better. So I think that we need to understand impacts from all angles. Last week, I reached out to Mr. Miller about a chlorine odor at my personal residence. So I hear comments from my neighbors in Potomac Landing that they have chlorine odor in their water frequently. There has been times that I've smelled chlorine odor in my water, but this time it was extreme odor as I was bathing my daughter in the bathtub. And we are aware that the pipes in Fairview Beach need to be replaced. I am happy to hear from Ms. Kupka about this grant. And that the consideration to give enhancements to Fairview Beach because they're definitely needed. Mr. Miller did follow up with me and informed me that the VAT had just recently been changed, that the testing was done and it resulted in normal levels of chlorine in the water, that the drastic changes in weather can cause a more prominent chlorine odor. But again, I will tell you that it was pretty heavy. Wanted to follow up again, also on Ms. Bender's comments as it relates to financials. I had asked many times for financials to be produced that show spent versus budget on a regular basis. We get the warrants and the agenda every board meeting, but really without the perspective of comparing it to the budget, we're really not able to know as a board if we're on track with the budget or not. And also would like to know how much money that we spent with the contractors, both just in general and also with the crisis that we've seen at the Dahlgren and the Perkins Corner plant, to really understand what impact that's going to have on the long term, being that these are unexpected expenses and how that really plays into that 5-year plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cleveland. As for myself, I would just like to say that as chair, I was advised of some of the going on at Perkins. Some of the information was incomplete at the time, and it was my decision not to pass things on to the other board members until we had the full story. I don't believe in passing out incomplete information, and I base decisions based on what I know and when data is available. Just like the 2x2 meetings, that wasn't something we are looking into. That was fact finding. That is not even approved. It's nowhere near to being a done deal. It is an option, and there has to be a method to obtain information as to whether we go forward with projects or we don't go forward with projects. And some of these fact findings are not conducive to doing in a public forum. So once we get the facts, then we are charged with presenting the facts to our customers before we move on. Nothing is being hidden, nothing. I'm trying to keep everything as transparent as possible, but I believe in having all the facts before moving forward with things. Thank you. Mr. Dines, did you get through to the caller? Okay, if she's ready, we can do that now. Ma'am, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
this is Kathy Marquis, and I don't really have comments at this time. I've been reviewing all the material that I got before the meeting started and haven't had a chance to review everything, but basically the main question I had, I believe, has been answered. And I won't know more until I'm able to get through all the materials for the meeting, but I appreciate having them to review. And so I'm sorry if I took up time that someone else could have used. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. We welcome any time, and also feel free to reach out to us anytime with an email if you have a question. You can send it to the general manager and he can redirect it to the appropriate person. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the consent agenda.
Motion to accept the consent agenda is written.
Second.
Motion's been made in second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any objections? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Report from the county attorney, Ms. Lackey.
I don't have a report at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, moving on to presentations and reports. First one, the VDH Water Resource Grant status.
I just wanted to take the time to again reiterate that the Service Authority received this $5 million grant. It's ARP funding that the Virginia Department of Health has directed our way. As you know, we have a complete reliance on groundwater for our drinking water, and the plan that they would like to see us do is to address a number of needs associated with our groundwater. And so we have had conversations, and we're working very closely with the Virginia Department of Health This is a cost reimbursement, cost incurred basis reimbursement type grant. And we are developing a water CIP that would then become available as part of the new fiscal year that would begin July 1. And we're working with engineering representatives on that. One of the things that we know that we've had discussions with the Virginia Department of Health on is that we could use this, some of these funds to apply to the Perkins Corner decommissioning, in the sense that and of course, Perkins Corner decommissioning is a wastewater project, but the other element to the Perkins Corner wastewater decommissioning is to undertake the interconnections of water lines, because once you open up the ground to put in new sewer lines that would convey the waste from Perkins Corner back to Hop Yard, you might as well do water lines at the same time. And so those interconnections from Hop Yard to Perkins Corner would be also something that they would allow us to utilize some of the money on the engineering work that would be associated with that. We also can use these resources to begin the process of looking at the surface water acquisition. And we know that that's something that they would like us to be moving towards. And that is something that we obviously are working towards. But that is a plan that that they have, we've discussed with them, and they are in agreement that that could work for us. But some of the focuses that will be part of this grant, a portion of these funds will go to things like upgrading the Circle well system, upgrading the system in Fairview Beach and Potomac Landing, upgrading the Claydell and the Dahlgren area, taking some of those wells offline and then having another plan. So this is a very much a multi-year project, and I just wanted to keep this in front of you and to remind you that this is a project that is something that we are doing and working very closely. We hope to have for you a draft CIP. It may be that it will be a part of your budget in the budget considerations, but it might be something that comes a little bit afterwards. But it is going to be in line with what VDH is looking for us to do. So,
Thank you.
any questions on that?
Okay, no questions. Moving on to the next item, the status of the budget, proposed budget allocation in the $16 million for the wastewater.
Well, Ms. Kupka trumped me, but I'm kidding you. No, actually, great news. And I think that the Service Authority and King George County in general ought to be very proud of the efforts of Senator Stewart and some of the other folks that are on our behalf. And I know that, this is significant, and this would be the kind of shot in the arm that the Service Authority frankly needs. I hear you all loud and clear about the operations of the wastewater plants, and I'll have a little section here in a minute to talk about that. But I do have at your desks an outline of the projects. If you want, I can walk you through those. But these are the things that we provided information on. These are some of those. As we indicated, is $16 million. So we are looking at doing about $2 million at Dahlgren, and those things are related to the work that we're doing right now to return that plant back to its normalcy. And so there are some things there. As you can see, there's a list of about 4 items, but some of these are things that were already planned, but some of these are more elaborate in terms of things that we're trying to get addressed right now with the needs at Dahlgren. One element that's part of that Dahlgren that's kind of a separate project, but it's related to Dahlgren is about $2.5 million in inflow and infiltration projects. And that's where we're looking at things like wastewater, we're looking at the collection system, what's coming into the plant, making sure that our lines have been lined and aren't leaking significant amount or allowing infiltration into them. We're also looking at the repairs and the replacements to manholes, the rehabilitation of pump stations. All these things we know were a contributing factor to the incident back in January. And so we're working and in fact have a project underway right now, but these are going to be some significant needs that will happen. Fairview Beach wastewater treatment plant, $100,000 for some process system and programmable logic controller. Perkins Corner wastewater treatment plant, that's the $4.1 million roughly for the installation of a UV system replacement, but also that's the decommissioning. So we know that's a huge project, and we know that RK&K is the engineering company on that, and they're all ready to work on that. Oakland Park wastewater treatment plant, $5.5 million, and that's the next one. And so what this $16 million does, if we get it the way, if it comes in a certain way, we could do 2 decommissionings at the same time. And I think that's significant because I think that's what, DEQ wants from us. And that's what we would be very, be happy to be able to undertake that project. Hop Yard wastewater treatment plant is about $3 million of upgrades. And so we have those as well that we'll be doing. Hop Yard, of course, is where if the decommissionings occur, Hop Yard becomes the central plant, if you will. And it's got the capacity, and we would be relocating the waste from those areas to Hop Yard from Perkins and from Oakland Park. So just to give you a little bit more information about what that 16 million was to go to. And again, good news, and we're very excited about that. I'll answer any questions about that as well.
Mr. Chair, I do have one question. These amounts that are on here, are they current or I know everything's going up in value. I just don't remember because I see some of these numbers I've seen for the last couple of years.
These are numbers that are probably 2 weeks old from an engineering firm that gave us those. So, obviously, as we get further in, Oakland Park, those numbers could change, as if it's pushed out. We know that Dahlgren improvements have to be undertaken pretty quickly. And so those numbers are going to probably be pretty accurate. But anything that might be 2 or 3 years in the future, I think obviously you're going to have to adjust them.
I have a question real quick. So you guys heard in my board report that Potomac Landing's having issues with chlorine in the water, and we know that the pipes at Fairview Beach need to be replaced. So I would like to know if we have determined how much life those pipes have left and if we know how much it's going to cost to fix those.
So the issue on the water side would have to come from water funds. I can talk to our engineering reps about, about the piping of, the infrastructure in the ground at Fairview Beach and Potomac Landing in terms of the water side. Now, what the 16 million was going to do, that's for sewer. So that would not go to Fairview Beach or to Potomac Landing for their improvements. So I will ask about the condition of the pipes and when we would need to start working on those.
Okay. Yeah, and I know that this was for wastewater, but the reason why I ask is because to my understanding, there were some issues with it, maybe having problems before in the past, and there was some tests that were done that determined that there was no issues with it mixing together, but I thought that maybe it could be incorporated in this because of that.
I would have to check, but I don't believe that we would be able to, especially if this is state funding for the wastewater, I don't believe they would allow us to mix it with water-related improvements, but I can definitely check. And I will check with the VDH in terms of if they would allow us to use some of that $5 million for water line replacements and things like that. Typically, I think they're looking more at the system, the overall system, like the well system, not necessarily how the water is getting to individual residents or anything like that. But I can certainly report that back to you.
Okay. Well, regardless, though, I think that we do need to make sure we understand what the life is left in those pipes.
Absolutely.
How much it's going to cost, frankly, because we're going to have to add that somewhere.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Copeland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here because I note the slide, Mr. Miller says for fiscal year 22-23 Commonwealth budget. So this is the biennium budget. So House Bill and Senate Bill 29 are for 22-23. The budget in which our money is contained is House Bill and Senate Bill 30. So that is for the second year of the biennial budget. So it would be for fiscal year 23-24. So I want to make sure that as far as wastewater money goes, so we know, as you said, we have the $5 million for drinking water because we've already received that on VDH letterhead, that they've made that grant available to us. That's something for water direct improvements is already available to us. But going forward, the wastewater money is for the second year of the biennium, not this first year. So it would not be available this July 1. It would be the next July 1.
Right.
But that is not too far off of the proposed CIP that we previously adopted. I note that most of the spending for wastewater was scheduled out, and here for your benefit too, Mr. Chairman, in 2023 and 2024. So just so we're all mindful of, like you said, which monies we have and how it is written in Bill 30 says for grants to the City of Fredericksburg and King George County Service Authority for wastewater projects. So I think you're probably correct as well that we wouldn't necessarily be able to use it for water projects, but it is specifically written for wastewater projects. And that's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for clarifying that, Ms. Kupka. Just want to throw out, Ms. Cleveland, there's a lot of technology out there now on these water lines where they don't have to necessarily replace them. They can reline them. And I'm sure the water staff could fill us in with the different options. And that would be, I would think, a capital improvement project. I don't know the current numbers, but I know a few years ago when we extended the water line down to Tractor Supply, it was like $1 million a mile to replace the water line. So that would fall under a CIP project, I believe.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure that we'd be open to hearing all the different suggestions, but something needs to be done. So we need to figure out what the life is and what can be done to help that system so that we don't have water that smells like chlorine.
Agreed. Thank you. Okay, anything else? Moving on to action items, the advanced metering infrastructure.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm Angela Turner, the procurement specialist. Item number SA-03-04, award of a service agreement for the King George County Service Authority Advanced Metering Infrastructure Project Authorize the general manager to take the following actions. Issue a notice of award to Borderline Waterworks for the King George County Service Authority Advanced Metering Infrastructure Project in the amount of $1,755,838.64. Authorizing execution of a service agreement with Borderline Waterworks in the amount of $1,755,838.64, subject to approval as to form by the county attorney. In July 2021, the King George County Service Authority requested proposals for the advanced metering infrastructure project. This RFP solicited proposals from officers capable of satisfying the King George County Service Authority needs for a new cost-effective AMI system that would meet current industry performances criteria related to the communication, methodology, software, and hardware. The selected AMI solution would also provide for advanced data analysts through an effective meter data management system and options for an integrated customer portal. The operational objectives include improved customer service, access to real-time data that would notify an abnormal water usage, improved planning capabilities, reduce water loss / non-revenue water, improved water conservation / water accountability, replacement of water meters and meter boxes, reduce current labor effort through read automation and system interfacing, improve customer service through an interactive customer web portal with one-line customer bill pay, improve cash flow, and reduced long-term operating costs. The proposals were evaluated in an evaluation committee consisting of representatives from the county and service authority, and interviews were held with 3 firms in September 2021. Following reviews of the proposals, interviews with the 3 shortlist firms, and negotiations with the highest ranked firm, the evaluation committee recommended the award of a contract to Borderline Waterworks. The project will have an 18-month deployment plan. Phase 1, Dahlgren, Fairview Beach, and Potomac Landing. Phase 2, Presidential Lakes, Arnold's Corner, and Courthouse areas. Phase 3, Oakland Park, Hop Yard, Canterbury, Ridge Road, and Nines area. The project budget for this project will be the contract amount of $1,755,838.64. The project contingency amount of $87,791.93. And the total project budget equals $1,843,630.57. At its meeting on November 9th, 2021, the Board of Directors approved the King George County Service Authority Capital Improvement Plan. The plan included funding for an advanced metering infrastructure project in the amount of $2 million. At its meeting on February 15th, 2022, the Board of Directors appropriated the $2 million. I recommend that the Board of Directors authorize the General Manager to issue a notice of award to Borderline Waterworks for the King George County Service Authority Advanced Metering Infrastructure Project in the amount of $1,755,838.64, and authorize the General Manager to execute an agreement with Borderline Waterworks, subject to approval of the agreement as to form by the county attorney.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. Any questions from Ms. Turner?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair. And part of the reason I'm asking this question is so that the public can understand exactly how much this costs. Ms. Turner, you might not be able to answer this, but Mr. Miller probably can. Is this the system that is going to use the towers to bounce off so that the customers can check it probably 3 times a day to make sure that their water is, they're not losing too much water, or see what their water usage is? Because I've gone over this with our former GM.
I know that this is a project that your former GM put together and you guys have been discussing, and then it just got put on hold. I know that it has a much more technology, so I'm assuming that it would be able to allow people to do that, and they could keep track of their water use. And it really is a big enhancement for what we're doing right now, and it's also going to reduce our labor.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a very significant situation, which essentially knocks out 2 to 3 people for like 3-week stretches while they go and locate meters and do the reading. And so this will basically kind of bring us
To the
up to
21st
date.
century.
Maybe, yeah.
I asked that because the price is big, but when I went over it with Mr. Weekly and he showed me both of the meters, the one we currently use and this newer one, and how important it was, especially for the customers, to be able to check it to see if they have a water leak. And it also is more efficient and it's more real-time data. And, you know, we don't need meter readers to go out to all these locations because it's bounced off in towers. So I just want to make sure the public understood that.
Okay, anything else? A motion?
I got it. So I move to authorize the general manager to issue a notice of award to Fort de Line Waterworks for the King George County Service Authority Advanced Metering Infrastructure Project in the amount of $1,755,838.64, and to authorize the execution of a services agreement with Fort de Line Waterworks in the amount of $1,755,838.64, subject to approval as to form by the county attorney.
Second.
Motion's been made in second. Any discussion? It would do a roll call vote. Ms. Bender?
Aye.
Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Kupka?
Aye.
Ms. Cleveland?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes unanimously. Excuse me. Moving on to the next item, appointment of the Citizen Budget Advisory Committee members. Does any member have a name to submit?
Chairman, I have an appointment I'd like to make. I'd like to appoint Jeff Bush to the Citizen Advisory Committee for the Service Authority.
Thank you. Any others?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Jim Griffin.
I'm sorry.
I'd like to appoint Jim Griffin. 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 Jim.
Okay. We have a motion.
Mr. Chair, I just want to ask anybody in the Shiloh is the one district that has the least service authority customers. So if there's anyone interested, I've asked a couple of people, they're just not interested in serving on a committee right now. So if anybody in the audience or out in the audience on air would like to serve, please give me a call. Thank you.
Okay, do we have a motion on this?
I'll make a motion to approve Mr. Griffin, correct, and Mr. Bush to the Citizen Advisory for the Service Authority Budget Committee.
Second.
Motion's been made in second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any objections? Motion carries. Okay, discussion items. Moving on to the general manager's report.
Okay. It was there. There it is. Okay. Okay. So Dahlgren update. I can report we have a weekly meeting with DEQ. And what I will probably also have is at the next meeting, have the Emboden environmental team come and give you an update on Dahlgren. But Dahlgren is back and it is in a good place. DEQ is very happy. DEQ is indicated that they are well satisfied, well pleased, I think was the words that we got from one of their representatives that's kind of been the point person on this. We continue to obviously work to address whatever daily needs that they have in terms of information, but the numbers are very well back to where they should be. I think the fact, and I will address this here in a moment, but the hauling of sludge from Perkins Corner that took place and being placed at Dahlgren is actually a good sign. It's not obviously a good sign for Perkins, and I'll report on that here in a minute, but it is a good sign that it was able to go to Dahlgren, because there was about a 2-week stretch there where we were not hauling any sludge into Dahlgren. And in fact, we were bringing sludge to help reseed the plant at Dahlgren, but it is back to the place that it needs to be. We have some projects that we're going to be working on to continue to improve that. But we have made some personnel moves and, placed people that that are taking off in terms of their role and their responsibility and their performance with the guidance that the Emboden team is providing for Dahlgren. But again, we work with DEQ and they're part of everything that we're doing. I'm happy to report that DEQ is essentially kind of pulling away from the Virginia Department of Health's concerns about the waterways, and they are satisfied that we have met some of the levels that needed to be reached. And so it's my understanding that the Virginia Department of Health will be working to make sure that they can relieve or not relieve, but in the ban on shellfish harvesting that was in the waters that they identified. So that's where we are on that. Perkins Corner. So, and you all obviously received my memo on that. And I certainly appreciate the comments that our chair indicated. I think we've talked about this with Dahlgren and we've talked about it with other plants. These things are things. These are systems that have failures at time. These are systems that have issues that occur, and there are actions that we take during the day. There are actions that have to occur. I'm happy to report on those actions and will, if that's the desire of the board. But there are things that are done to prevent situations from happening. And what was done over the course of the last week was in answer to serious operational deficiencies that we are now addressing, that involved personnel that just had been causing some concerns inadvertently by their actions. And we got the Emboden personnel in there, the Emboden team in there, and they were able to start the process of addressing concerns. I think I identified in previous meetings that we were having concerns about the flow, these surges, these rushes of flow that come into Perkins Corner. Perkins Corner is a plant that is fed by a pump station. So it comes in at different intervals throughout the day. And they were encountering serious flows that were causing concerns about overflow. The Emboden personnel were able to come in and start the process of readdressing the way it ought to be run. We found that there were some issues with some valves that were stuck, that the operators that were in there were not aware. The operators were under the impression that they needed to recirculate and recycle some of the water and some of the back into the plant, but that was actually then causing issues with surge and the flows being heavy. We found out that what's known as mixed liquors, which is your level of solids, was as prior to the Emboden representatives taking over the plant, the mixed liquor levels were in the 8,000 range, and you need to be in about the 3,000 range. And so they had to be involved in getting rid of that sludge, and getting rid of that sludge meant we had to haul. It's not a situation that we are in that is, grave. It is a situation that you have a plant that is going to be decommissioned. And the treatment process, if it's not done right, will backfire and have issues and concerns. And as I said, I think that it would be very instructive if anybody on the board would like to have a tour with Emboden personnel in there and some of our personnel that we've reassigned to some of these plants to take advantage of their skills and things like that. And as I said, I'm happy to provide you that level of detail. I think that Ms. Bender had indicated she would like things about the nutrient levels. I'm happy to provide that. I'm happy to do that if that will serve your needs. I think the other thing that has to be kept in focus, and I believe I said this, we haul sludge on a regular basis out of every plant, and it goes to Dahlgren. We haul what's known as waste sludge, which is the stuff we don't need, and we haul it to Dahlgren, where it then goes on a conveyor press, a belt press, excuse me. That belt press dries the sludge, and then that sludge is then hauled off to the landfill. So Dahlgren is the only plant that accepts sludge and can hold the sludge and dry it and go through what's known as a dewatering process. So on a normal basis, we are in and out of Perkins on a 1 to 2 times a week hauling basis because you have to get rid of the sludge. And there was a buildup of a lot of sludge at Perkins that was causing these issues. And so that's what they've done. Perkins is coming back to where it needs to be. And we are working with DEQ. Whenever there is a change of any significance, whenever there's a change of any process that's outside your O&M manual, you have to report that to the DEQ. So the DEQ has been a part of this whole thing. And I assure you that, we're getting the plant back to where it needs to be. We've made some changes. If I can take a moment, I have an actual report on that here in a second, but that's where we are on Perkins. And like I said, I'll be happy to set up individual meetings. I do think it needs to be individual, I don't, certainly if you have concerns about 2x2 meetings, I don't want to certainly do that, but that I can't have more than, I can't have 3 members there, or that's an open meeting. So I think that if you want to learn and you want the information, then it would be something that I'd want to set up individually or at most 2 members at a time and see and hear from experts on how these systems operate and to understand the delicate balance that has to be in place. And if it gets out of balance, then it can cause so many issues to trigger that, like a chain reaction of events. And I think that's one of the things that we're able to do. And let me skip down to number 4, because that's something that I think needs to be understood, is that your wastewater plants are extremely important assets to this community. I don't think anybody could say otherwise. They're also extremely regulated, and their operations are heavily watched by DEQ, the Virginia Department of Health, not to mention our teams, obviously. And so when there are things that happen, there are things that go out of balance in terms of operations, they can have a serious impact on things down the road. And that's what's happening. And through the decision that Mr. Weekly made to hire Emboden as your operator in responsible charge was a very valuable decision, and he is to be commended for that. But there are decisions and there are actions that have occurred that led up to actually probably several years in the making, where personnel were put in places that they really were operating below the level of competency that we needed. And those things are being identified. Those things are being found out. And unfortunately, they're found out through crises. And that's what we're trying to do. I will tell you that the wastewater services, and I don't mean this to say that there isn't issues in the water service in terms of pay or in terms of how we compensate. It's across the board. It's in the county. It's in everywhere. We know everybody's strained, you know, in terms of their lifestyles and what they get paid and things like that. But in the wastewater services, we know that we've got to address some of the pay ranges for some of our entry level and some of our operators and our high level managers in that department. And so we're going to work on that. And if there's something that has to come back to the board on, I will bring that back to the board and ask for your authority to make those kind of changes. I do believe that Mr. Weekly talked about that in his previous tenure with you as well, that there is a need to look at the pay ranges for people.